Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to talk about subnetting. A subnet is a logical subdivision of an IP network. The process of dividing a network into two or more networks is called subnetting. The main purpose of subnetting is to help relieve network congestion and improve network performance. Security is another benefit of subnetting. In this video, I will use a simple way of subnetting. Let's look at one example. One day, your supervisor walks to you saying, "Here is the network ID 192.168.4.0/24. Please create three separate networks or subnets for a coffee shop. One subnet is for the office, one is for the front desk, and one is for the public use. Your task is to list each network ID, subnet mask, host ID range, number of usable host IDs, and broadcast ID. Now first step, let us build a table. This table is the most critical because once we build it, we can easily solve most subnetting questions. This table has 3 rows with 9 numbers. First row has subnet, second row has host, and third row has subnet mask. The first row is subnet with 9 numbers. We will start with 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and 256. The second row is the host. This row tells the number of total host ID for each new subnet. It starts with 256, 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, 2, and 1. Here the pattern is that each number is half of its previous number, or the second row is the reverse order of the first row. You see, it's so easy, right? Here the pattern is each number is double of the previous number. The third row is subnet mask. We use shorthand format starting with /24, /25, /26, 27, 28, 29, 30, /31, and /32. Well, we are done with the table. So subnet mask /24 is taken from the question original network ID. Now let's go back to the question. We are given a network ID of 192.168.4.0/24 and we are required to create 3 subnets. Now let's look at the subnetting table and try to find the 3 subnets in the top row, which is subnet row. Of course, there is no exact 3 subnets, but we can see 4 here. Fourth subnet is nearest to 3 and it's suitable. From 4 subnets, we are going to choose 3 subnets. So let's highlight the whole column. I have highlighted the fourth subnet with the pink color. Subnet 4, host 64, subnet mask is /26. Now we'll ignore all other columns because we can get our answer just from this column, or these 3 numbers 4, 64 and /26. 4 means 4 subnet, 64 means each subnet will have 64 total host ID including network ID and broadcast ID. /26 is the new subnet mask for these 4 subnet. Now I'm going to create another table where I can calculate the network ID, subnet mask, host ID range, number of usable hosts, and broadcast ID. So let's find the first new network ID. The first network ID is always the original network ID, which is 192.168.4.0/24. So our answer is 0. I am using the red font to identify the last number because first 3 numbers will always stay the same. So please just focus on the last number, which is red in color. We get next network ID by simply adding 64 to its previous one. So we'll add 64 in 0 because our host is 64. Therefore the second network ID would be 0 plus 64, which is 64. So second network ID is 64. The third network ID would be 64 plus 64, which is 128. The fourth network ID is 128 plus 64 from the host, which is 192. Now we are going to find the subnet mask. So it's 26. Our subnet mask is 26. The original subnet mask was 24. So we are going to write 26 in all the cells below subnet mask /26. We are done with the subnet mask column. Now let's list the number of usable host IDs. We can also find the answer from the subnetting table. which is 64. 64 is the total number of host ID for each network or each subnet. But the first host ID is reserved for the network ID and the last host ID is reserved for the broadcast ID. Thus the number of usable host ID is 64 minus 2, which is 62. So we will write down 62 for all the 4 subnets. 62, 62, and in the final row we write 62 again. Now let's look at the broadcast ID for each subnet. Keep in mind the last host ID is reserved for its broadcast ID. Therefore, broadcast ID for the first subnet is 63. We can tell this with the reference to the next network ID 64. Next broadcast ID is 127. Next one is 191. And the last broadcast ID is 255. We can see the broadcast ID equals next subnet network ID minus 1. We can also do like this. Once you know the first broadcast ID, which is 63, you simply add 64 to get the second broadcast ID. So 63 plus 64 is 127. Then add 64 to 127, which we will get third broadcast ID 191. And then add 64 again to get the fourth broadcast ID, which is 255. We are almost done. One last column. A subnet host ID range is any ID between its network ID and broadcast ID. For the first subnet, 1 to 62 is between network ID 0 and broadcast ID is 63. 192.168.4.1 to 192.168.4.62. The second host ID range is 65 to 126, is between 64 and 127. 64, 127. The second host ID range is 65 to 126. The third host ID range is 129 to 190, is between 128 and 191. So 129 to 190. The numbers in the black will be same, only the red ones will be changing. The fourth host ID range is between 192 and 255, which is 193 to 254. To keep simple, we only talk about the last number because first 3 numbers will stay the same. These 3 highlighted octet will remain the same, only the last one will be changing. That's why I have put it in red color. That's all, we got all the answers. Now you can assign any 3 out of 4 subnets. One subnet is wasted, of course. That's the downside of subnetting. I want to thank you for following me at this point. Even though the process looks tedious, but once you get to know how to do it, you can solve any similar questions in no time. If you have any question, please feel free to leave your comments. I will be happy to help you. Thank you very much for watching my video.